April is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. Now, it's very, very important for us to have this conversation because we live with people that are, that have autism, and I think that the lack of awareness and the lack of acceptance of the reality of what it is sometimes, sets a lot of families back and poses all kinds of challenges. And I've been joined in the studio by Dr. Kelvin Owusu, who is no stranger to this show. He is I don't know if I can call him resident doctor, but let me call him resident doctor. He's the head of occupational and health and wellness at occupational health and wellness at Claron Health International. And I've also been joined by Whitney Hamel-Anning, who is the executive director and co-founder of Autism Compassion Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Now, let's get into the conversation already. Now,
Sure.
I want to start with Dr. Kelvin. What is autism?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I mean, so generally, autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder, but
Neurodevelopmental disorder.
Yes.
Okay.
It just simply means that there are people who have challenges when it comes to expressing themselves. The very things that you find easy to do. I mean, like communicating, like shaking hands with somebody else. Others find it very, very, very difficult. Now in Ghana, we think it's not common, and I'm saying we think it's not common because maybe it's because we are not aware enough about it. I mean, personally, I've never made a diagnosis. I've dealt with patients with autism, but I've never actually made a diagnosis of autism before.
Okay.
So and I've worked as a medic for 10 years now. So it tells you how low the awareness is.
Okay.
That if you are not in that space, you might think it's something that it's much ado about nothing.
Okay.
You see, and so it's a good thing that we are creating awareness about the situation, about the condition, because many people who have autism or something in the spectrum, because it's not one disease, it's not one condition that we call autism. It's a spectrum. They are different. There are people with very mild forms. I mean, maybe you and I probably are on the spectrum. We can't tell. It's a wide spectrum where it ranges from very minimal or mild forms of it to the very severe forms where the person is totally unable to do anything at all. You see, so it's something that we need awareness about, so that if we can catch it early, and I'm sure Whitney will talk about it, if we can catch it early, there's definitely interventions that can be put in place for them to have as much of a normal life as possible under the circumstances.
Yeah. Now, if you haven't seen the series, The Good Doctor, you need to watch that, because that series for me epitomizes what it is we want to do in terms of awareness creation and acceptance within our society.
Yeah.
Whitney, why did you even get into this in the first place?
It's something that I always loved teaching,
Okay.
and I found myself eventually working in special education. So I've been in the field of autism services for about 15 years now,
Okay.
and I've been here in Ghana for 5 years.
Okay.
And one thing I'd like to add on to what Doc just said is, for Ghana, like you said, we don't know what the statistics are, but the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, says 1 in 54 children are on the autism spectrum in the States. Now, if you apply those same statistics here in Ghana, that could be up to 500,000 individuals that we don't know about. And it's only a small percentage of people who are getting services and help. And that's why awareness is so
very, very
important. And then past awareness is the acceptance. How can we as a greater society take these individuals and really support them as best we can?
Okay. Now, let me ask you, because, you grew up in an American culture.
Yeah.
Sometimes from a Ghanaian perspective, you seem to be a lot more accepting of certain things, than we would be. Now, Doc, I don't know what your experience is as far as autistic people, children especially, and the societal reaction to autistic children has been. From my perspective, I would say it from more of a religious background, having pastored and worked in the religious space for a while. You notice that people have spiritual connotations that they attach to children living with autism. What has your experience been?
I mean, it's very true. I mean, we are quite a spiritual group of people, so we always go the spiritual way first. I mean, and that has also contributed to the late diagnosis. I mean, there's already a problem of late diagnosis even in America, because a lot of people miss it, you know, when it's right in front of them until much later in childhood. Sometimes it even goes beyond. You know, but ours is compounded by the fact that many of such children are first kept in the prayer camps, you know, in other places, and you see, even when the diagnosis have been made, the parents hardly accept it and they don't initiate the therapy, maybe because of the cost components, maybe because of other things, but they tend to go back to the religious angle and try to deal with it spiritually, you know, worsening the prognosis, you see. So yes, it's a major deal. In fact, if you walk on the streets and you see some of the children we've tagged as mentally challenged, some of them are actually on the spectrum, and they could have actually gotten help. In fact, they can still be helped, you know, but nobody is taking responsibility for them because they've been abandoned, because they are I don't know how to, they are not functional as we would have expected them to be, you know. So it's still a major problem.
Whitney, what's your experience? I mean, I wanted you to do a little bit of a comparison, acceptance levels in the US versus acceptance levels in Ghana, what you've experienced.
Well, I think it's also interesting to note that when I was growing up, we didn't really know the word autism as much even then. So I think the awareness is further along in the States, but we're still, you know, catching up there too. Like you said, some people, it's hard for families to accept the diagnosis. But when it comes to, you know, awareness, there is a bit of a disparity there in the acceptance piece. You know, we have, you recently broke a story about a young 2-year-old boy in Central Region that was, you know, buried at the sea, and thank God he survived. But, you know, there's a big level here of needing to support families to get the help they need, instead of tackling everything just purely from the spiritual side. That's also an important piece, but there's other ways to get help as well.
What are some of the early signs of autism?
Well, I mean, so I was just going to add that, and I guess to tie into what you're saying, and because the awareness is getting better over there, you realize that the teachers in the schools actually help a lot more, because they're able to, they spend a lot more time with the children during the early days, so they're able to pick up some of these things and then make the appropriate referrals, because they tend to have a better system of referral. So that, and with the special education, I think even some of the schools have the special needs children in the same campus
included.
Exactly, you know, so it's much better over there. Over here, first of all, most of our teachers are already overburdened with large class sizes, so it's a bit difficult for them to now pay attention to the little
ones that have
exactly. And so most of these children are tagged as dumb, you know, because they struggle, and these are some of they struggle to focus in class, you know, they struggle to have physical engagement with other children, you know. Imagine, I mean, you have watched The Good Doctor, you see how they behave, he was behaving when somebody touched him, you know, so it's like
the reaction of the rest of the staff to him.
Exactly,
you know,
and sometimes even some things as sudden movements, noise, you know, it sets them off, you know. It's just like I mentioned earlier, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. For the large part, we don't know what the causes are. We know what the associations are, you know, but in terms of cause, we cannot point to a particular thing. For most of them, we cannot point to a particular thing that is responsible for them having those signs and symptoms that we are talking about. You know, a few cases you can identify a genetic predisposition that may have, you know, resulted in it, but to a large extent, we don't know what causes it. You know, we only know what could result in a child becoming autistic or being on the spectrum.
What should families do if they suspect? That they have a child?
Yeah, so you mentioned the early warning signs. So some of those early warning signs can even be seen as young as 6 months when a child isn't socially smiling. You know, when you're smiling, engaging, the child's lighting up. You know, there's kind of two types of autism. Some you see signs from early on. Others, a child may develop fairly typically, and then around 1.5 to 2 years, they may have a regression. So if you have a child who has some speech, and then all of a sudden it just kind of is not there anymore, not responding to their name, those are those different signs. So if you see those for your child, you want to reach out to your doctor. I also suggest that no offense, but even in the States, some doctors don't maybe have as much experience with autism. So they may say, oh, he's okay, just wait a little while, he'll catch up. If you feel in your gut, maybe something's not right here, reach out to another and get a second opinion, and try to find a doctor who maybe specializes in neurodevelopmental delays and such.
I mean, I can imagine, you know, I mean, I have a daughter, and, you know, thankfully everything's, you know, is fine. She's 14 now, but I can't imagine the difficulty parents must go through, you know. Thankfully, I mean, I think you must be the third or fourth person that I know that's running, you know, an awareness program for autism, you know. So I think it's very different because maybe 2012, I met the first person. I think that was the only person who was doing that, you know, in Ghana. But now
things are moving.
Yes,
you know,
even
in the 5 years I've been here, there's a lot more schools operating.
It's amazing.
I'm seeing. I saw a student or a child for a assessment recently that was 16 months old. And that's really really nice to see that families are reaching out for early intervention. As you mentioned, early intervention can make a significant impact to life outcomes for the individual. So
how can families and society, you know, support, you know, children especially that are living with autism?
I think it starts from supporting the families in your community. There's a lot of stigma out there, and it may be hard for parents to get the support. So if you know someone in your family or in your community, how can you support them to be able to go and get the help that they need, and reach out to the schools to push for inclusive education? That's how we're going to make that greater impact as if a society were accepting, so that we're not just pushing these people on the street and letting them go for life, right? They can hold jobs, they can be successful. Look at the good doctor, right? And
the good doctor is brilliant.
It's a spectrum. So, and sometimes, you know, individuals with autism can be really great in one particular thing. So how can we support them to do that and build up opportunities vocationally?
So I was actually going to mention that, I mean, it needs to also be included in our education system some way, somehow, you know, where it's because our system is a bit one-sided, you know. It focuses on academic excellence, you know. So if you are not performing academically, everybody you are resigned to whatever your fate is going to be. So like Whitney said, the autistic spectrum people tend to be great in certain areas. It's up to somebody to try and discover what they are good at, because that would actually help them to settle, you know, because when you actually find what they are good at and you allow them to flourish there, you realize that they're actually calmer, they actually engage better when they are actively doing what they love to do. You know, so communication with them is very, very important, you know, and it comes with, you have to learn it. I mean, no parent wishes that their child will be on the spectrum, but I mean, it's happened. So we have to find ways and means of adapting and then, you know, living with it and helping them, you know.
Supporting them.
Exactly, supporting them in wherever they find themselves.
So typically, what does your organization do for, you know, children?
So my organization is Autism Compassion Africa. We opened in 2017, and we have a center in Cape Coast. So it's a day program, and children come for applied behavior analysis therapy, and it's mostly one teacher to one student, so it's very intensive, individualized. And then we do consulting across Ghana and Nigeria. And in addition to that, we raise awareness, and the third piece is continued education. So sharing and strategies with teachers. We've had psychiatric nurses come and be interns at our school, and we've supported Ghanaians and Nigerians to get certified in ABA, so that we're building local capacity, because there is a great need for more trained individuals to support these families and children.
So how do people reach out to you if people are watching right now and they either want to support, you know, in one way or another, or get help?
So we have a website, autismcompassionafrica.org. We're on Facebook. We're also on Instagram. And if you go to our website, it also has the school number there as well. So we're an NGO here, but we're also a 501c3 nonprofit in the U.S. So even people outside that are listening, there's a donate button on there they can go to support.
Super. Doc, how do we you know, should I say debunk or demystify some of these, you know, things that I've heard things like spirit child, and I've heard things like water baby. You know, I mean, it's.
I mean, it will take a concerted effort. I mean, both the religious people, the medical people, you know, there needs to be some effort to demystify some of these things, you see, because yes, there are spiritual issues, and yes, there are physical issues, and yes, the spiritual issue may impact your physical outlook and all of those things. But I mean, there's also room for research, and these are things that have been well researched, and we know, like I said, we know the associations, we know the things that are likely to cause them, you know, so you don't ignore those things, and then when the consequence has happened, then now you are turning to the spiritual, you know. So we need to make sure that we are doing our part, we are playing our roles. Yes, by all means pray, but don't ignore the proven science that's also showing results. So pray, and then allow the child to go through the what's it called, the help that they need, you know, because your prayer might be answered through the program, you know. So don't keep the child at home, or don't kick the child onto the streets, you know, just because he's a little different. Because I mean, interestingly, all of us are a little different. Did we get kicked out?
You know,
exactly. Did we get kicked out? No. You know, so let's pay attention to our children, you know, and especially, and also to the parents. I mean, there's pressure everywhere. Everybody's looking for money. The economy is all over the place. Let's pay attention to our children, you know, because if we as parents are able to pay close enough attention to our children, we can actually pick some of these things early, you know, so that even if your doctor is not recognizing what you are seeing, I mean, like Whitney said, if you know what you are seeing, seek a second opinion, or even a third opinion, you know, so that somebody can recognize what you are talking about, and then the intervention can be started. Because the earlier it started, the better the outcome.
I think one big push that needs to happen is expanding special education. Right now, children with special needs go to a specific government special school in the region. There's way more children that could fit in that one building, right? So in the different public schools, how can they take the teachers trained at University of Education Winneba, at UCC in special education, and have them be special educators at those schools and expand from there? Inclusive education is a big thing that needs to push forward.
And I don't know if it's okay to actually separate them so much. So that's
because
actually
something that creates, you know,
the stigma.
The stigma.
Yes. Because if all the children in the school are seeing these,
the acceptance part of it
must
be like, let's be inclusive. You know,
research actually shows that it helps the development of the typically developing kids to have those children included in their classroom. It builds empathy and other great skills. So it's a good thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to share this with us.
Thank you.
Well, we've been speaking with Dr. Kelvin Owusu, who is the head of occupational health and wellness at Claron Health International, as well as Whitney Hamel Annie, who is the executive director and co-founder of Autism Compassion Africa.